as a way of providing some additional covering and a pedestrian connection off of the sidewalk. They're also providing an awning or a bit of an architectural feature on Broadway to break the massing down along Broadway, so it's not just one solid mass of the building. So they are attempting, in good faith, to make the building more pleasing and more consistent with our form-based code. Just because of the interior arrangement of the building, it's difficult, if not impossible, to change that interior layout to accommodate a Broadway entry. So this seemed to be a good compromise, especially since the building was originally constructed according to the previous zoning ordinance and complied with those conditions at that time. There's no proposed encroachments. The project meets the parking standards or the vehicle parking standards in terms of width of parking spaces, et cetera. They are proposing to provide a bike rack. They do need 4 spaces. There was no information about the total number of spaces on the site plan, so that would also be a condition that they would have to, or some information that they would have to provide. Parking along the west side of the building is existing. There's no modifications proposed, no street screen requirements apply. And then proposal includes landscaped area along the frontage line, even though it's not required, but they are proposing that. So I thought that, again, that was a nod to trying to make the current site a little bit more attractive and appealing and more pedestrian scale. Whoops. Proposed air conditioning equipment will be located in the 3rd lot layer, and therefore screening requirements do not apply. The proposal includes a dumpster, which will be enclosed in compliance with the requirements for the CD4 district. Signage will be reviewed and approved under a separate permit from our building official. And there is nothing that has indicated that they plan to install or modified lighting, but if they do, any changes to the lighting would have to conform with section 96.13 of the city's code. Staff recommendation on this particular proposal is to approve SPR 23-01, subject to the following conditions. The applicant shall provide information indicating compliance with the following standards in the CD4 district: building height and ceiling height, minimum glazing requirements, roof pitch ratio, and the number of bicycle parking spaces to be provided. Again, they're required to have 4 based on the number of parking spaces. Also, the second condition is that the applicant combine the 2 separate tax parcels. So the current property where the business is located and the residence to the east that they are purchasing and will be building on, we're requiring that those 2 parcels be combined into 1 tax parcel, and that's something that our assessing office likes to see. And then any other requirements of public safety and public works will need to be complied with as well. So with that, Madam Chair, I believe Tim Beebe is here on behalf of the applicant. If there's any specific questions or if there's any questions of me or the staff, we'd be happy to address those. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Merveza?
Yeah, Bill, I have a question, and it's just for my knowledge for the future too. Why is it important to combine the 2 into a single tax parcel?
I'll let Tim address that if you would. And Tim, you'll have to go up to the podium if you would. We can't, well, one of the reasons is that if you build across 2 parcel lines, now you have 2 parcels. Now, if the property is sold, now you have the potential of a building that's on 2 separate parcels, one of which you may no longer own if you decide to sell one of those parcels where there's where the building's built across. That would be one reason.
Another reason is you have required setbacks. And it's impossible
Oh, sure.
to have those setbacks with the building built across. You also, in order to divide a parcel like that, that has a building that goes across the line, you'd have to go through something like the Condominium Act in order to do that, and units would be on each side. But the combining of the parcel, you're looking at a site plan that encompasses the entire, and that site plan can't function the way you're approving it without it being one parcel. So that's why this, one of the main reasons the city wants to see that. From an assessing standpoint, they've got all their other reasons of, let's not have two parcels to assess, I want one.
Now, interestingly, our zoning ordinance doesn't really have that requirement. I mean, a development parcel in the zoning ordinance doesn't speak to, I mean, it's a parcel, it doesn't speak to whether or not it's separate tax parcel numbers. It's just the building site. We may be revisiting that at some point in the future to make it consistent with what our assessing department would like to require, or does require moving forward. But a little, there's a little wiggle room in there in terms of interpretation or definition, if you will, but that is a recommendation for approval should you move in that direction.
Which we have no issue with.
Okay, yeah. I did have one other question for you, Mr. Beebe. I think it shows it on here, but on this scale without my glasses, I can't read it. But the curb cut, is that being removed?
Yeah, the existing curb cut for the
driveway,
residential house
yeah.
will be removed and replaced with
Okay.
full standing curb. Bike racks are shown on there, but it doesn't specifically state that there's 4. If you go to the, let's see, how can I describe it to you? If you come along the sidewalk on the west side of the building, the existing building, you'll see that there's kind of a island up to the north. There you go. There's 2 bike racks sitting there, which will accommodate 4 bikes. So we will add a specific note that says that there's 4 parking spaces. There were 4 items, A, B, C, and D in the review.
Yes.
Let's attack those. Building height, we had colored renderings turned in, and what we were doing with that, we needed to be able to present to the Zoning Board of Appeals what we were proposing. And we didn't want to go ahead with full architecturals until we had actually gotten a variance. So architecturals are being worked on. I can tell you that the building height is not over 40 feet, but I can't tell you exactly what it is. I do know that there may be some issues with ceiling heights in the existing portion of the building because I know they are not 11 feet. So in the remodeled portion, that's something that may become an issue. In the new portion, they can accommodate that. Roof pitch and ratio will be shown on the architecturals, but it will comply. And we did talk about the bike racks. We have no issues with combining, and we have no issues addressing the public safety and public works comments. In fact, this must have been written up early because the stormwater has already been dealt with and approved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Manuela wrote this up before she left in mid-December. So,
Really?
yes.
Our new planner left?
Well, no, I'm sorry. She went on vacation.
Oh.
I'm sorry. So she is, we are planning on her returning on Monday. Right?
Okay. All right.
But yes, this was done a little bit earlier than usual, just because she was under a deadline and
Yeah,
had to
no,
move forward.
understood. But stormwater has been turned in, reviewed, and approved. So if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
I think you guys did a really good job with this one for the zoning board too, with the 2 little nods to the code with the facade in the front.
Yeah.
And then with the extending the entrance, both those things, I think were a great way to comply as much as you could.
Yeah, it's sometimes tough with an existing site, and we're
Yeah.
trying to keep her in business while we're doing the
Sure.
demolition and construction. So that portion of the old building, she'll be functioning out of while Konwinski is building the new addition and tearing down the other portion. So it's going to be a challenge, but they're going to try and keep her going. All right. Well, thank you.
Sorry, I have a quick question, I think for Mr. Merdays. Now, in regards to the possibility of not, the old portion of the building not being able to adjust the height of the ceiling, because that was an existing building portion that was to code previously, are we able to acknowledge that and what we say that it would be, that we would look at the standards meet for the building heights in the new portion of the building, or?
I am going to defer that decision to our new planner, Manuela, when she gets back.
Okay.
Part of that will be up to our building official in the building code, but we'll work with the owner and the developer to see where we end up with that.
Okay.
Yeah, because I know if you were looking at, if you were just taking that building and putting on a new roof and putting on a new pitched roof, you'd have to comply with that, but you wouldn't have to raise the walls in order to put the roof on. So I'm certain that on that portion of it, it'll be the term that planners hate, grandfathered in, but the new portion will have to comply, anything that's built new.
Any other questions?
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I will open up discussion.
Move to approve SPR 2301, subject to the following conditions. 1, the applicant shall provide information indicating compliance with the following standards in CD4 districts. A, building height and ceiling height. B, minimum glazing requirements. C, roof pitch ratio. D, number of bicycle parking spaces provided. 2, the applicant combines the two separate tax parcels, 17,000,008,628,00 and 17,000,086,27,00 that encompass existing dental office at 611 East Broadway and the land on which the building addition will be constructed at 617 East Broadway. 3, the applicant shall comply with the requirements of building safety, and public works.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is public comment. If there's anyone from the public that would like to comment, I don't see anyone here physically, but if there's anyone on Zoom or.
Let me check. I see no one via email. We only have one other individual on Zoom, but I believe that he is looking to comment on the second case coming up here as an extension. I don't see any hands raised otherwise.
Thank you. I will close public comment. And the next item on the agenda is new business, starting with discuss and consider an extension of SUP 2201 and SPR 2201. Mr. Merdeza?
Yes, ma'am. I am going to unfortunately read some of this as Manuela had prepared a bit of an explanation on both of these. So SPR 2201 and SUP 2201 is for a child care center at 1510 West High. It's the Little Red Wagon Daycare. On January 6th, the Planning Commission approved both of the cases and conditions. There were conditions as part of that approval, including the construction of a sidewalk on Burt Street. And that is recorded in a performance bond. So While childcare centers are now allowed as a right, so they don't have to file a special use permit, at the time that this was approved, they did need a special use permit as well as a site plan review. So the extension of the sidewalk was a condition of that earlier SUP, and so they do need to comply with that. Since that time, they have complied with the other requirements that were conditions of their approval, except for the sidewalk. The property owner has not been successful finding a contractor to put the sidewalk in, which is the reason that they're looking for an extension. They're requiring a 1-year extension for the sidewalk to be completed, and staff recommends giving the extension to the applicant to proceed with the project in 2023. Now, in your packet, there were 2 areas that were highlighted. So site plan approval shall be valid for 1 year unless a building permit for such development is obtained. An extension of 1 year may be granted by the Planning Commission upon a letter of request by the petitioner, which was received. In the event of such an extension, the Planning Commission may review the site plan in accordance with any subsequent zoning changes that have occurred since the initial approval when it considers an extension of that request. Also, in terms of special use permits, it says section 154.615.c.4 says, in the event that more than a year has elapsed and development has not begun, the Planning Commission shall review the permit in relation to the standards and requirements currently in effect. If the permit is still in conformance with the provisions of this chapter and there has been no change in the conditions affecting the appropriateness of the special use or special regulated use, the permit shall remain valid. If there's been changes, the permit shall become void. So in this case, there's no proposed changes to the previously approved site plan or elevations, and there have been no changes to the zoning ordinance since the initial approval that would prevent any extensions from occurring. So what I just read will be applicable, and I'll just reference it rather than read it in the second case, but I wanted to make sure that you had the basis for an extension, and both section 154.613.e.8 and 154.615.c.4 give you the approval to do so. I will also indicate that in this particular instance, this is a one-time extension request, so the sidewalk must be completed within the next year. And because there's a performance bond issued as part of this requirement, that actually allows the city to solicit bids and have the work complete to bring the site in compliance with the SUP. So if indeed the applicant is unable to find a contractor, we can kind of take that over, if you will, and then have them pay for the work to be done under the performance bond. So whether or not we can find a contractor is another story, but that option is out there too. So they do have a performance bond to complete the work, and they fully intend to do so once they're able to find a contractor. So as I said, the staff recommends giving the extension to the applicant to proceed with the project in 2023.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Merdeza? Is the applicant available for questions?
The applicant is not on Zoom and hasn't provided any additional input by email. I believe that Laura had contacted her today, and yeah, she's planning on moving forward with the project.
Okay.
I have a question for Mr. Merdeza, if I could.
Sure.
I just wondered, at what point in the future would the city step in, according to the ability in the performance bond, to solicit bids?
If the applicant required assistance with that, or if they were unable to to be able to complete that and had moved forward with the rest of the requirements. In those instances, we would step in and do that.
I'm just wondering, that would be prior to the,
The 1 year?
yeah,
Yeah,
I see.
yes, yep.
Thank you. Just curious.
Any other questions? I will open up discussion.
I know from my work at the library and personal construction on my home that I've had a really hard time finding contractors too, so it doesn't surprise me that this situation has happened, so I'm willing to grant the extension.
I'll make the motion on that.
Sure.
All right.
Move to grant a 1-year extension of SUP 2201 and SPR 2201.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is discuss and consider an extension of SUP 2202 and SPR 2202. Mr. Murdeza?
Yes, so on January 6th, 2022, the Planning Commission approved both SUP 2202 and SPR 2202 for an automotive garage at 1200 South Mission. And you might recall that this was for Discount Tire. To date, the applicant has not secured a building permit for the project, and the approval will expire on January 7th, Saturday, unless an extension is granted by the Planning Commission. The applicant, is my understanding, fully intends to move forward with the project and is seeking an extension based on their interest to do so, but some delays that had occurred. There's no proposed changes to the previously approved site plan or elevations, and there have been no changes to the zoning ordinance since the initial approval that would prevent the extension of the approvals. Staff recommends giving the extension to the applicant to proceed with the project in 2023, and the same sections of the zoning ordinance apply that I previously read to this one that would allow you the opportunity to grant that extension. As I indicated, Mr. Westerbeck is on Zoom, and I can unmute him if you would like to provide him an opportunity to comment, if he would like.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
All right. I think you summed it up pretty well there. I think that the architect has started the process of going through to get the building permit. And I believe the last I heard is that they were very close to having that. So the intent is to put it out for bid within the next couple of months and get started on construction this spring. I guess that's all I really got to add. So I guess if there's any questions too, feel free to ask me.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Murdeza?
I'm just curious, because I wasn't here when this was approved, where is that?
That is the location of the former bowling alley on Mission Street.
Got it.
Yep, over by Special Olympics.
Yep.
Would this also at this time be a one-time
Yes.
exception?
Yeah. And again, once they secure a building permit and they start construction, then it kind of goes into the building permit side of things. So there may be some opportunities for the applicant to extend beyond 1 year under the building permit. This really is more about getting a building permit in the first place and starting construction under the approval that you provided.
Within the time frame. Sure. Thank you.
I will open up discussion.
Move to approve granting a 1-year extension for SUP 2202 and SPR 2202.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is proposed 2023 meeting calendar.
Yes, in your packet was a proposed meeting calendar for this year, and if it looks good to you, then we would entertain an approval of that to set your calendar for this year. That includes the dates of applications, the due dates for applications, as well as the dates of the planning commission meetings in relation to that. This is consistent with what your previous practices each year in order to provide some certainty in terms of when you are planning on gracing us with your presence here in the evening.
So it doesn't look like any spring breaks conflict with our meetings then?
As far as I know, that this has been vetted and we should be good with, typically it's like either spring break or 4th of July or some, holiday type thing. And I think this year that we should be pretty good with this.
What does the asterisk on October 10th mean?
I'm sorry?
There's an asterisk next to October 10th deadline.
For Columbus Day?
We're checking. Okay, so for those that may or may not have heard that, city offices are closed the day before on the 9th. So this is a Tuesday as the application deadline to allow for that closure and allow folks to submit when we're actually open.
For Indigenous Peoples' Day.
Yes, correct. And that's actually a new holiday that the city instituted this past year, moving forward. So I don't believe that we had that potential conflict in the past.
So is there a motion to approve the?
Move to approve the 2023 Planning Commission meeting schedule.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. And does anyone have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn. Second. Okay.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Meeting adjourned.